Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about nouns in Latin. So I'm not going to take you through any specific nouns, but we're just going to have a look at some of the functions of nouns and some of the different things to consider when talking about nouns. So the first thing is declension. So just how we said that there are families of verbs called conjugations, you also have families of nouns, and these are called declensions. That's really all there is to it. There are 5 declensions, but really there are only 3 that are like very common. For the 4th and 5th declensions, they're just used less commonly. So declension really isn't something to worry about like conjugation. It's just a family in which, as I said for verbs, there'll just be sort of similarities between how they decline. So the next thing is gender. So there are 3 genders in Latin. You have masculine, feminine, and you have neuter. So if you're studying a modern language, you should probably be familiar with masculine and feminine. In English, we don't have genders. But masculine and feminine shouldn't come as a surprise. However, Latin does have a 3rd gender, which is neuter. Neuter is usually used for like inanimate objects, or things that you traditionally wouldn't think would be masculine or feminine. And the important thing with gender is that each noun will fall into one of these genders. So the next thing to discuss is case. So case will probably be a new concept to many people. I think there are some languages that have it, like German, but for the most part, if you're learning the Romantic languages like Italian or Spanish or French, I don't think they have them. But the important thing about case is that it just tells you the different forms of a noun. So a noun will have a different case depending on its function in the sentence, okay? So that's really the key point to make. So I'll just write that down here. So the forms of a noun, they're just the forms of a noun, and determine a noun's function. Okay? So here I've put the 5 cases. So you have nominative, accusative, genitive, dative, and ablative. So you have 5 cases, and I get that many of these cases will be completely new to everybody. That's fine. I promise you that they will quickly become familiar. So the nominative case is used for the subject of a sentence. Okay, so the dog crosses the road. The dog is the subject of that sentence. If that sentence were in Latin, the dog would be in the nominative case. Accusative is used for the object. Object, again, as I said before, it is the noun that has the action done to it. So the genitive is used for possession. So when I say possession, I mean sort of the word of is basically the definition of the genitive. So let's take an example. The handbag of the woman. Right, obviously you could just say the woman's handbag, but in a literal sense, the woman's handbag is just the handbag of the woman. So here, woman would be in the genitive because the woman possesses the handbag. It's her possession. So I'll just write that down. Of the woman would go in the genitive. The dative is used for the indirect object. So just means 2 or 4. So take the example of the sentence, the king spoke to the slave. The slave would go into the dative case in that example. Ablative, oops, sorry, I missed out the E there. Ablative, I hope you can see that, but E at the end. The ablative has actually a range of different uses. Well, in fact, all of the cases have more uses than I've mentioned here, but these are sort of the key ones that you need to know. And in due time, we'll come across some of the other uses, of these cases. But the ablative really has a range of uses. It can mean by, with, or from. I mean, even sort of by means of. So, for example, in the sentence, the general went to Greece by ship, by ships, whatever. That is the same as sort of saying by means of ships. That would go in the ablative. And the last thing we have to look at is number. So number it's just a fancy word for singular or plural. Okay, that's really all there is. And by the way, you might see me abbreviate to SG and PL. But yeah, that's SG stands for singular, PL stands for plural. So every noun has a singular and a plural. In English, having an S at the end of a noun makes it basically plural. And in Latin, it's the same kind of thing. You just have different forms for the singular and the plural to distinguish them. In fact, as a side note as well, I'm just going to mention the definite article. So, unlike Greek, Latin does not have a separate word for this. You can add the definite article. For those who don't know, the definite article is just sort of the word the. So, like the tree, or the book. It's just the word the. And Latin does not have a separate word for it. Basically, if context deems that the definite a sentence would make more sense with the use of the definite article, then do put it in. But there are usually there are no sort of marks for putting in or taking away the definite article. It's really up to you whether you want to put it in or not.